Hi, we are Group 3 and we are here to present our scientific critique about chasing corals. I am Isidro Francisco III. Together with me is Mr. Espirito John Wilson, Hernandez Jean Cole, and Teresa Halathon. And let's start our presentation with Miss Teresa. Go Tere!
Now we first discuss the observation. The documentary started on the notion of how the ocean was alienated despite its waters covering the majority of the Earth. Richard Beavers, together with his team, presented the XL Clean Seaview Survey, which allows the virtual experience of diving into the ocean. However, they aimed at the audience which failed to realize the environmental problem within the waters. Beavers then reached out to a number of scientists, especially marine biologists, showing records and data of widespread coral reef devastation. Already 30 to 50% of the corals in the world are lost. The topic of coral bleaching was brought up, which is a phenomenon of the coral stress response where they expel the microalgae capable of photosynthesis within their tissues. They decided to document the phenomenon using a customized camera system. The team also consulted a professional that can analyze heat patterns and predict which area to be affected by mass coral bleaching event. The first reefs that were captured by the team were in Hawaii, Bermuda, and the Bahamas. However, the footage retrieved here is not usable. After some months, the final shooting was done in the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. Towards the end of the documentary, they showed how the bleaching event is widespread with people reporting across the globe. Studies and strategies have been made over the last 3 decades to combat further wide-scale coral bleaching. However, it's still advisable for people to invest in scientific innovation. Now on to the next part with the questions.
When discussing climate change, the usual discourse that surrounds it is how it will directly affect us humans and the land that we live in. Really are the seas and the oceans part of the discussed issues, despite it being 71% of the Earth's surface. What we fail to see are the coral reefs from deep within. Their niche in the sea is very similar to how important trees are to us. The documentary focused on the discovery of mass deaths of coral reefs brought about by the rise in temperature. A 1 to 2 degree spike in the temperature can cause all of the algae to become uh, expelled from the corals, which results in coral bleaching. This doesn't only affect the corals itself, but uh, it sets off a chain reaction, uh, removing a food source for various aquatic animals. As seen in the documentary, a lot can happen in a very few weeks. Coral reefs can go from being healthy one day to being completely white and dead after a very short time. Uh, since 90% of the heat from the sun that is trapped inside the earth is being absorbed by the oceans. What else could be the effect if the oceans continue to exponentially increase in its temperature? Will us humans still have enough time and resources to fix what we have broken? Only time will tell.
Good day everyone. So now we will be discussing about the hypothesis. So in the documentary Chasing Corals, they formulated that the null hypothesis is thermal stress events caused by climate change does not affect the bleaching of corals. So they were trying to disprove this idea that the sudden rise of heat caused by climate change is not affecting the coral bleaching. So the null hypothesis cannot be rejected unless they've gathered experimental data that could invalidate it. So to do this, they went to different places to capture a time lapse of corals turning white. And also they've asked for records of the relationship between the sudden rise of heat of ocean to the deaths of several corals from marine biologists. So next will be the alternate hypothesis. So the alternate hypothesis is just the opposite of null hypothesis. So it would be the thermal stress events caused by climate change affect the bleaching of corals. So this hypothesis will not be accepted unless they rejected the null hypothesis. So according to the common theory accepted by many scientists, they say that the climate change affect the bleaching of corals, which contradicts to the null hypothesis formed by the documentary.
Good day. I am Francisco Isidro III, and now let's tackle the predictions for our scientific critic. For the last 30 years, we had lost 50% of our coral reefs, and if this trend continues, we could possibly lose the majority of the remaining coral reefs for the next 3 decades. And this is an alarming problem because if we do not change, if we do not implement the policies and rules, our oceans and our marines will suffer. And let us not forget that we humans will suffer as well. The documentary team were able to extrapolate the scenarios through the possible connection of climate change and coral bleaching. The team designed an innovative sea camera that would be able to capture time lapses of the environment over time. The scenarios were scientifically testable. It was done through observing the ecosystem and the organisms in the corals. And it can be distinguished. What I mean by what can be distinguished is the thriving of the ecosystem before the corals died. It was thriving, and right after it died, system became dull. System died. A similar research was conducted by the National Oceanography Centre in the UK last 2018. In the study, scenarios were extrapolated through the possible effect of the decrease of fish and invertebrate population, leading to a food shortage at the year estimated 2035. However, they provided solutions on how we would able to address the problem. The researchers mentioned that filling up knowledge gaps within the community is a good plan, as well as creating plan for food security, and they also pointed out that the best action to combat food shortage for this phenomenon would be able through adapting, creating, and supporting policies. And this is all for the predictions of our scientific critique. Thank you. And now let's proceed to the hypothesis testing. In the documentary, the team was able to showcase the relationship of rising temperature to the degradation of the coral reefs day by day. Observations were done, documentations were done. They were able to assess that there is indeed an inverse relationship between the corals and the temperature. And as the temperature increases, the quantity and quality of life of coral reefs decreases.
At the start of the film, they had a goal for the people to realize environmental problems and how it really affects the ocean. By capturing the reefs that were predicted to be affected during the time, they can unmask the current situation of the ocean and propose new ideologies with the people.
The team rejected the null hypothesis through gathering experimental data that could invalidate it. So they went to different places to capture a time lapse of a coral turning white. And also they've asked for data showing that there is a relationship between the sudden rise of heat to the deaths of corals from marine biologists.
The damage from climate change that the coral reefs are taking at this moment will possibly lead to a collapse within the environment larger than imagined. With the interconnectedness of ocean species within the coral reef ecosystem, a prompt reduction from a single species may affect other species, as retrieved from the study of Komyakova in 2013. Uh, Being part of the solution is not a choice anymore, but a necessity.
And that finishes our presentation for Scientific Critique Chasing Corals. Once again, I am Isidro Francisco III, and together with me is Mr. Espiritu John Wilson, Mr. Hernandez Jean Cole, and of course, Miss Teresa Halathot. And that finishes our presentation. Thank you, have a blessed day, and see you next time.